It's the AI Revolution Call with Cody Willard, Bryce Smith, and our man John Dio, who has been working in the AI industry for 3,000 years.
Right. Finally
30 years.
Okay.
Yeah. It's good to see you, Johnny. Good to see you, Bryce. Bryce and I have been talking nonstop for the last 24 hours, basically preparing for today and what the implications and ramifications of DeepSeek AI. DeepSeek AI, the China LLM. It's changed everything. Sell it all. It's going to zero. AI's over for the United States. All right. Here's basically a quick synopsis. John, you're going to correct anything I get wrong here. DeepSeek is an AI subsidiary company organization inside of a hedge fund based in China. A hedge fund that has been using this AI that it's been building to trade. And they somehow have made a breakthrough teaching AI to learn and train and even inference more cheaply by an order of magnitude, or maybe even an order of 2 magnitudes. But I'm not sure we're believing the $5 million number that they said it took. That excludes all kinds of other training and costs.
Well, that would be 3 orders of magnitude.
Okay. So that's, I was going to say, even if it's 50 million, it's like 2 orders of magnitude. So, you know, John, we've already spoken with our friends at a hyperscaler or two. We've been reading nonstop on trying to get our heads wrapped around what all this means. We did a little bit buying today in Nvidia, which we are, you know, I've owned Nvidia since 2016. We bought a little more for the hedge fund today on the sell-off. We took off some hedges. We had SMH semiconductor hedges. We sold all those puts. So look, we obviously are not panicking. Now, that being said, I'm not sure we or anyone has truly got their head wrapped around what the hell's going on and what all the implications over the next 5 months, 5 years, 10 years are from all of this. John, we bring you here to talk, discuss, help us get enlightened about it all. What are your initial thoughts here? And then we can drill down with specific questions.
I mean, my first thought, you know, I read your, was your newsletter or your message that you sent out specifically related to this was, you know, a lot of people talk the talk, but you kind of walk the walk in terms of buying on the way down. And it seems like the exactly right, you know, reaction. It's not like these companies are going away. So that's one thing. I thought you guys are on target. Super interesting development. You know, I don't want to say I told you so. I didn't about China, but about open source. You know, that you got to be, you know, really watching because they were catching up until the point where, you know, at this point it was like, oh, 3 months ago that the OpenAI came out with O1. It's like they really closed the time gap on, you know, coming out with the advancements. It's really kind of head scratching about what it means for, say, an OpenAI or something. But I think what it means for, you know, we can talk more about what it means for infrastructure. You know, all this talk of spending $100 billion there and $500 billion there, you know, for chips and power and so forth, I think is still going to completely be the way to spend the money. And I think is that doesn't change. The fact, even if this is, you know, 1,000 times cheaper, it doesn't take away the fact that it is the power of the chip. It just has more power than we thought. And that the use cases are practically endless and hardly tapped yet. And I heard somebody mention this, you know, is it Jovan's paradox? Which is basically, you know, you think that because something got cheap, it's going to mean that now you have too much supply, when in fact, all it did was open up those use cases. And suddenly the supply, you know, because of the supply, because of the reduced cost, those use cases create even more demand, and you're more into it than you were even. So that's
John,
the way I'm thinking about it.
It's a good point you just made. Actually, yeah, we were just discussing. What is the paradox again? What's his name?
Jovan's, Jovans.
Jovanis. Yeah, Jovanis. Trying to get you to pronounce it for me. Jovanis.
Jovan.
I don't know. But yeah, we look, that the idea is always that whether you're talking about smartphones or launch, when technology advances along with costs dropping by an order of magnitude or 2 or 3, that's the sweet spot. That's when actually the innovation and all of the applications and the millions of people and companies around the world can suddenly get access to the best AI. OpenAI was talking about charging $1,000 a month or something for their most advanced LLM. That's off the table. They're not going to charge that anymore. Yeah. But one of the things that we talked about,
I wouldn't push back because I don't believe any of China's numbers, so I'm not going to say that OpenAI can't charge what they want to charge and that everything's changed. So I don't take anything that DeepSeek
somebody has to take
put out at face value. So
somebody has to take that line on it.
Look, and fair enough, right? I mean, we certainly have seen Chinese small companies and hedge funds defraud the world. Like, it's not unheard of that the whole thing is faked. Like, but that being said, John, maybe you haven't yet, but I'm sure you have friends, and we've talked to people who have literally been using it and trying the API out and testing the LLM that DeepSeek released, and it does work. Bryce's point is it's probably not 5 million, it's probably not 50 million, it could be 500 million or billions of dollars that they put in and or are leveraging from other sources to get the stuff to do their LLM to do what it does. Now, that being said, one of the things that the bull case, in addition to sort of how you outlined it there, John, is put a different way. It's like, look, if you spent billions, tens of billions of dollars building Gemini, one version of Gemini, but now all of a sudden you could redo it all and retrain it and re-inference it and do new versions of Gemini, and you can have 10 or 20 or 50 versions of your AI LLMs that are tailored and improved and do everything else. Not to mention, if this is actually true and we are able to do much more AI at much cheaper costs, well, what are you going to be like? Imagine what you will be able to do if you've got a $50 billion, 800,000 cluster Nvidia Blackwell GPU system built in the next year or two using this better, cheaper way of training it and inferencing it and using it. So go ahead.
So what did they say that among other things that this year was going to be in terms of AI before this happened? It was it's going to be the year of agents, right? Right. And so I'm programming agents now. That's what I'm doing on the job. And so what we're talking about here is, one of those is smart and 10 of those is a lot smarter. And they basically are working with each other on difficult problems and handing information back and forth. And each of them specializing in what it is they do. You could really think of them like, employees, each one of them. And, they may not be all the way there yet. In some cases, they're well beyond there. Like these models, they operate really at a PhD level, but they lack all of the, I need to call Bill and ask him about that. And, I understand what my company's actually trying to accomplish and, where it makes sense to pursue. So there's a good
context. It lacks context,
right? and what's
strategy.
I was going to say what's the word for, I'm blanking on it right now, but for what the self has,
ego?
Close, but like the agency, I'd say. It's funny. Agents don't have agency.
Ironically, yeah. Agents don't have.
So, they have it insofar as they've been told to go do this particular thing, but they don't have, the real curiosity, creativity. There's a complement here. There's real room for people and these things to work together. And John, yes, into what you were saying, if you have the ability to suddenly have 1,000 of them instead of one of them, let's go.
Yeah,
That's what we're going to do.
And the market seems to actually be snuffing that out, just at least in directional terms, at least, where Apple has not spent or built any LLMs, but has all kinds of personal data that will be leveraged to make agents for you to be like, hey, Apple, book my ticket for Miami, show me all my options.
And then they didn't go down. So, you know, they're one of the one stock that didn't get hurt badly out
Well,
of this.
John, also CRM, Salesforce, they're not building LLMs and they're not building super data centers, clusters, anything else, but they are making agents for enterprises right now. And exactly what we're describing, you know, they have hundreds of agents available already, I'm sure. Now in a month, it'll be 1,000. And the order of magnitude of agents that you can build using your data. If you're a software company, another one that's up today, by the way, GitLab. It is a repository for software code and a place to collaborate building software code.
We've got this rebalancing of the companies that are, you know, purely models, and kind of they're going to level out the ones that are down at that lower infrastructure level. And then you come up a level, and those ones are doing okay. But another thing about those ones is the part you describe, next month it'll be 1,000. It lags a little behind the, you know, the model development, which is a good thing. It means that they have more of this, you know, in front of them to go really.
Well, and I'm probably exaggerating. Call it 6 months. But the point being that even in, you know, technological revolution terms, 1 month, 6 months, a year, like that's a blink of an eye stuff. Like this goes back to what I always talk about, the Kurzweilian acceleration of the technological revolutions. Like it gets faster and they improve and they get faster and the next revolution comes quicker and the order of magnitude improvements that it makes get faster. And instead of it being years, it's months, and instead of months, then it's weeks, etc. Bryce, thoughts, comments, questions?
Yeah, I mean, just zooming out a little bit, I think what is revolutionary potentially about this DeepSeek thing is the cost, right? And what they did to achieve this huge cost improvement, if it turns out to be real. And I mean, I think that many people in the AI industry have said that there's big algorithmic efficiencies to unlock, you know, cheaper AI and to get like ChatGPT, I think has 200 million users right now, right? And in order to reach like meta scale, if you want to use it like meta scale, like 3 billion users, right? Like it has to be de minimis cost. Even $20 a month is too much. And so I think everyone probably in the AI industry is looking for ways to make AI cheaper, both for training and inference. And I think this, if this turns out to be true, is good for the whole AI industry. I mean, it's open. Even the China DeepSeek thing is open source. So Meta, Google, and everyone at a hyperscaler is digging into that technical paper, figuring out what they did, and if they're going to try it on their system, and if it works, then they're going to implement it.
Yeah, there are people running it already totally without China. They just stick it on, you know, a U.S. server. Nothing goes back to China.
Yeah,
it's completely open source, open weight. So you don't need MIT license. You know, you don't need any.
I just want to temper our bullishness a little bit. Let's be clear that we're not covering every short and we're not going on margin buying Nvidia and stuff today. I think it's like sort of what we're getting at. We're going to snuff out some new trends that will probably be directional on who's the winners and who are the losers from this new development. Bryce and I put the question out there to people who work at hyperscaler that, look, is there a discussion that you guys are already like, oh my gosh, maybe we don't need to spend as much money on Nvidia chips as we thought we were going to do. We don't need all the Blackwells we've got ordered. No, that's not the case. If anything, again, they think they're going to be able to use this new technology to build even better AIs and stuff. But we're 3 days into this new R1 model being released by DeepSeek, and even the guys who work at the hyperscalers, Amazon, Google, Microsoft, et cetera, they have no idea yet. Like there's, like John's describing, they're plugging it in, they're testing it on some US servers, they're playing with it. There's a lot of process that has to go through to verify all of this anyway. And let's just be blunt that it's a probably very small chance, but there is a chance that DeepSeek truly just changed everything and screwed Nvidia. That is a small possibility, but that's what the market's panicking about, because there's none of that panic priced in. Everybody's in Nvidia. Even watching the guys, listening to the guys when I was driving just a few minutes ago on CNBC Fast Money, pretty much everybody's like, no, it's fine. You got to buy TSM. Nvidia's fine. one guy was like, look, if you're on margin, you might need to sell Nvidia. And then apparently everybody on Twitter unleashed on them. And like the world is not selling yet. And that is a little bit worrisome from just a trader sentiment perspective. As Bryce is noting, though, if it's all bullshit, if DeepSeek if it's not actually cost 5 or 50 million and it costs hundreds of millions or billions, this is all still positive for AI, but it really doesn't change anything for Nvidia or the chips.
The fact that they've open sourced everything as well as kind of shared their process for creating it gives others the chance to kind of reproduce what they've done and just show whether it's true. You don't have to kind of get into their accounting to know whether it's true.
And on that note, John, it's interesting that I shared an article this weekend with Bryce from the New York Times that showed all of the fraud that's gone on in the Alzheimer's, trying to treat Alzheimer's industry. And even like the head of the NIH for Alzheimer's and brain diseases and stuff, it's got fired. I mean, it was fraudulent for years, faking images and things. And that's the way you catch that stuff is you literally you could try to replicate his studies, and you're like, hey, those pictures are clearly like fake. Like you're images that aren't real, and that's what is worrisome for the Nvidias of the world, is that people are verifying that this is maybe legit.
No,
right?
but come full circle. Even if it's legit, that's not. It doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing. It doesn't decrease demand for chips. I
saw an analogy this weekend to, if you were on Twitter and all this weekend and in tech at all on Twitter, you saw DeepSeek
nonstop.
So, but one of the ones that made me think was they said, Netscape had their browser, right? It was a multi-billion-dollar business. Cody can probably correct me on how big it was. Right. But it was huge.
Mark Andreessen, by the way, one of the guys thinking about OpenAI this weekend, was the builder and creator of the Netscape.
Yes, and he had something to say about this.
It was a great model, and they sold it like it was literally like you had to buy a license to use the browser, right? I don't know what that cost.
I was a user.
I have no idea. Like, what did it cost for the browser?
I think it was like $9.99 probably, or $20, probably really? $10, I think. Right, John? Does that sound about right?
Yeah, I don't remember the cost. I was at University of New Mexico. I was using it there.
So and then Microsoft came along and released Internet Explorer and for free, right? And it's like if you get Windows, you get the Explorer.
And bundled it. That was the illegal part. They not only released it for free, but they bundled it as free in their Windows computers.
So, and then they're like, that's what happened just now with OpenAI and DeepSeek. But I'm like, I don't think that analogy carries, because unless truly you don't need chips to make AI anymore. Because you didn't need advanced chips to build the internet browser. Right.
But no, and John and Bryce,
ChatGPT was the advanced chips.
So and the ChatGPT is the special sauce that you're interacting with. The browser was simply a conduit to whatever you wanted to go interact with, including like right now we're doing this call on a browser, right? But
that one lasted.
What's that?
That one lasted. The browser technology.
The browser, but that's what I mean. But the browser was a conduit. That
was a conduit to the internet. The internet had been around for 15 years, but it was a pretty important conduit.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. It's still, though, it wasn't the meat that it's like. AOL would be the better analogy. Like what if anything, maybe. And here's an analogy. If we're I've been calling this the dial-up stage of the AI revolution. So whatever we think AI is doing right now we have no clue how amazing it will be in 5, 7, 10 years, and how like archaic what we do right now, talking to some ChatGPT app on your phone and getting an answer on how your tires and axles work on your car or something. That's great. But what it will be doing eventually is basically our job. Like it'll be watching the stocks for us, and it'll be trading the stocks for us, and if you have a job as a coder, it'll be creating the code for you, and everything else that goes into your jobs. Like it will be replacing your actual labor laborious.
And you'll be like, whoa, don't buy that house. I don't.
No, I didn't want that house. I wanted the other one. AI. I just want to mention real quickly, full disclosure, and there's a question we'll answer here. I think just about every name we've mentioned so far, Bryce, in the hedge fund and in our personal accounts, we own about 15 different names, including just probably about all the names, including GitLab and Meta, Amazon, Google, etc., Apple, Nvidia. As part of that, someone just asked, what are the implications for Oracle? You know, one of the things about Oracle here and why we had just recently started buying it around 150 3 weeks ago is because it's probably the cheapest inference play out there. And it wasn't spending its money building LLMs that were getting commoditized, but it was spending its money becoming the cheapest inference place on the planet. I am a little worried that the inference dynamic just got cut too. Again, if there are actually more applications and services being built on AI, there will be more demand for inference than even Oracle would possibly be able to meet. But that's, again, that Oracle's down 14% now, Bryce, 15% on the day.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest reason why. Not only that, but it's also just like spending billions of dollars building.
What's the name of the? I don't know what his name. What's the name of the founder?
Larry
Ellison. Larry
Ellison. So I was looking into, you know, he's part of that big Stargate deal or whatever. But then I looked into like there's this video of him talking about, if AI, you know, fulfills its promise, we'll be able to like watch what everyone's doing at every moment. And I'm like, holy crap, he's got this idea like this dystopia is a good thing.
Dystopian surveillance future.
Yes, yeah. So he's
so
personally, he's got a view of it that I'm not too thrilled with. But yeah.
Speaking of Ellison and I think Ellison's probably genius, even though he's not perfect. But
yeah, anybody who makes a $500 billion company gets to be called a genius.
The smartest people in the world and in the United States have been working on AI for years and months now, spending all of the capital investment, all the VC money has gone to AI. And how, like, if the DeepSeek thing's real, how did they all miss this simple, here's this fine tuning that now it's 30, 40 times cheaper?
Yeah, I thought about that, you know, and I thought that despite the fact that we seem like this is such a, vibrant, industry, actually, in some ways, it gets itself quickly calcified. And it's like, there's steps we have to go through with how we do our research, and the OpenAI being, hidden about everything and so forth. They may have to rethink how they go and do things. And that's where I agree with like Andreessen calling this like the Sputnik moment for AI, because it's like, instead of it being, the Russians just, got to space first, it's, the Chinese just created this, this model. And all of a sudden it's this like, wake the heck up. This is a real race, and the race is underway, and Usain Bolt just went by, and we're sitting here like, okay, now what do we, right? I thought of it a little bit when I saw, their dog robot, which is doing unbelievable things. But yeah, so we've got to wake up and look at how are we going about this, because yes, we've been in it, but it's not like, and certainly China has, a ton of super smart scientists, but so do we. Mm-hmm. And so how are we enabling it to take place? And the fact that we aren't enough is,
well, I'd push back on that a little bit. Just that, it is like we are spending unlimited capital. The Mag 7 are, Mag 5 that are actually building this stuff, the infrastructure, that they are spending.
No doubt.
Like in my career, I never thought there would be a day when one company would spend $100 billion on CapEx in a single year, but we're there, if not this year, next, or maybe the year after, at least, and we're going from tens of billions of dollars CapEx collectively to an order of magnitude larger.
The money is being spent. Yes.
Heading towards $1 trillion being spent.
Yeah.
And likewise, it's not like, the other thing is that, the U.S. system, for all its faults, is by far the most transparent, the most, has the most rule of law, has the most freedom of speech, has the most freedom of enterprise, and all of those things. And I will always take the United States on a bet against any other country when it comes to technology and profitability on technology, monetizing it.
Yeah. So, I mean, okay, we've got to see that emerge on the process side, because we did get, if assuming certain things are true, we did get sort of blindsided. And I think that now the other thing about it, though, is that you talk about the infrastructure layer, and I'll put with that both the model creation and training and so forth, and even power. These kinds of things are all infrastructure. And then you go up a level and you talk about like what's happening with this stuff, what use cases are being employing this stuff across different industries, and that has barely started. But I think the U.S. is in a really good place to be the ones. Then you go, really, yeah, the browser is just the browser, as compared to like the web. So who's going to be the web for this? And I think it can be us, but we have to, lot more people have to get involved on that next level. We've got people like using ChatGPT. Oh, I'll go over and ask a question or whatever. But it's like, no, really using it to where you're setting.
John, like that's just it, right? Like eventually we get these agents and other applications and services built on top of AI that become integral to your everyday life. You use them constantly. You're talking to it, you're interfacing with it, and all the things that happen with it. And that's where the lock-in and switching costs that start to be built into the business models happen. And if you're already locked in on Salesforce, for example, up 5% today, partly for these reasons, because Salesforce, all the enterprises, the Fortune 500, thousands, millions, tens of thousands, I don't know how many enterprises and small business customers are on Salesforce, but it's hundreds of thousands, if not millions. And those guys are locked in. It's not like they can be like, all right, we don't need our CRM data anymore. Let's just port it over to Amazon Cloud. No, it's all inside of CRM software and databases and everything else. And you're locked in. And the more that those agents get built and the more they become an integral part of your life at a de minimis cost price point, the more you're locked into CRM or.
I've been thinking more about that, about how, a Salesforce or whatever, it's like, they may at first think of their asset as being their software and whatever breakthroughs they made with that. They kind of invented SaaS and all of what they deliver in terms of that. But like once they've done it and they've got all these customers in place, that's the asset. It's like, it's what you flow through those channels to, out.
And then that you built, again, the applications and services and agents and whatever other terms are going to come up that you're going to build on top of that platform base of data and CRM knowledge base and CRM, by the way, customer retention. Yeah.
Customer relationship management.
Relationship management. Thank you.
Yeah. So like they have all those connections. Somebody can come along and say, I've got this cool new product, and then try to get people to use it. And the biggest example for how quickly it can happen, theoretically, like, is ChatGPT. But most other companies, it takes time to develop that. So you can go and from scratch have a product, or you can be somebody who's got the whole thing in place and who's like, what's your next demand? Don't worry, we'll be. We don't know what it is that you're going to need, but we just know that we're going to be the ones giving it to you.
Full disclosure also, we have been short and remain short some of the suppliers to the AI industry, including Vistra. We're short Microsoft, which we've been mentioning off and on here. It's a hedge against our other AI infrastructure plays. I do think there's going to be some serious losers in the technology world, and probably including Microsoft, I think, over time. Microsoft, just to get the thesis out there why we're short, 2 or 3-fold. Number one, Windows has always sucked. It still does. Number 2, Copilot sucks. Might as well just use Staple Guy. Number 3, what's his name? What's the Staple Guy's name? Clippy.
That's a Mark Benioff.
It's Paperclip Guy.
Yeah, Paperclip Guy. And then and likewise, there's basically, it seems that they've partnered and spent tens of billions, maybe even close to $100 billion, helping OpenAI, its partner, build an LLM that is starting to compete against Microsoft's Copilot and other products.
Likely winner, Tesla. Because Tesla likely winner because they're so vertically integrated that they have the products that the stuff's going to flow into anyway. So whichever point of it, oh, that thing down there got cheaper, good for us. Oh, that, whatever. So
yeah, I mean, that's just it. So again, Tesla's our biggest position, and it remains so. We certainly have a few hedges on it too. Earnings are happening on Wednesday, and they might not be as great as the market needs them to be, or whatever happens all the time. But yeah, I mean, and Microsoft likewise, I think they're conflicted in their strategy of how they're going to build and make money on AI. And I think they're breaking up in a slow motion breakup. I've had those in my life where it takes a longer time to break up with the girl than you meant to. And I think OpenAI has been trying to break up with Microsoft for about the last, Benioff said the last year. That might be as long as it might take, but it's been a good 6 to 8 months, if nothing else, of them breaking up and then still sleeping together.
I don't know, him showing up with other suitors there at the White House.
Even just you read the body language of Satya Nadella over there when he was in Davos and sat down with CNBC, and they were asking him point blank questions about his relationship with OpenAI and whether or not the other partners of OpenAI would be able to spend the money that they're planning to spend to build these data centers. And he truly looked like a girlfriend who'd been broken up with, and he was trying to make it sound like he's not hurt about it, but I think he's hurt. I think Microsoft's hurt. Bryce, comments, thoughts on that? Can you chime in? You're on that page.
Yeah, I mean, we've been saying that for a long time now, and then it's finally come to a head, and it's out in the open. And I told Cody, what you saw from Satya in Davos is, I think, as upset as I've ever visibly seen him in public. And
that guy's usually cool as ice, and he had no poker face on that interview.
Yeah, and he famously now said, I don't know what's going on. I'm good for my 80 billion, and he's just.
And that's for the rest of those motherfuckers.
Right.
All right, he didn't say that.
That's where they're at. But that's not good for Microsoft, who outsourced their whole AI strategy essentially to a startup. And now that startup decided they want to partner with some other people.
How about Texas, which is getting everything from everything? Even this stuff they're talking about,
Yeah. It's all Texas all the time, apparently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They might as well, what do you call it? Secede.
Secede. Yeah. They've been there before, but yeah, it all started taking off as soon as I left.
Call it the Lone Star Nation.
Oh, you know what I didn't ever realize is that the Texas state flag is in every American flag. If you do a zoom up on one star and you pick up some of the red and some of the white, I think it must have been on purpose.
That's funny.
You just take a look.
You might be giving them more credit than you should, John, as usual.
I think it's real. I think you look at it. It's perfect. So,
yeah. One thing this DeepSeek thing did make me think of with the China-America dynamic, though, is that every week on Twitter, it seems like there's also a new humanoid robotics startup that comes out, and they're all based in China. And I don't know how many there are at this point, maybe 30
hundreds.
About 20 that I've seen all lined up with actual.
So you all have probably seen these same videos, and they're always impressive, and they're dancing or they're folding laundry or walking the dog. And so, again, I don't know how much of it's real, but I do think it's a point worth remembering is that China is a serious competitor for the United States. And when their national resources are focused on an area like AI or robots, they can get some shit done. That's they have that capability. And in the United States, really the only company doing it seriously is Tesla. And then you have a handful of startups like Figure and Boston Dynamics, which I don't know if Boston counts as a startup.
Yeah, it's not a startup, but
we don't have a national directive from the White House to build humanoid robots.
Thank God. Do not never let the central bodies tell the innovation what to happen and how to happen. It's literally, Bryce, I'm glad you finished with that point, because I was going to say the problem with China in that approach of a central control and central function and a central monetary funding of it is always, it's like they skate to where the puck was, not to where it's going. And this being obviously an exception to that rule, but and by the way, we should also just mention, this is also the doing of the Trump and Biden Republican Democrat regime policies that have been like, don't let China get the best chips. And so China, of course, was like, no problem. We'll figure out ways to get around that. And
I don't know that means it's wrong to withhold chips. In fact, I think we may not be withholding the chips enough if they are somehow getting around to having, we think it's just this, but really it's 50,000 got gathered wherever. I mean, we ought to be watching our chips. But yes, the involvement is, we're better off not having the Manhattan Project be run by the government, So we do need a Manhattan Project, but we don't. I mean, we don't need it to be a Manhattan Project.
We need exactly what's happening. We need the most well-funded and profitable companies.
There are more startups for humanoid robots in the United States. They're all in China.
Wait, Bryce, what we need more than anything else is the most well-funded, most profitable companies on the planet spending all the money they can and all the resources they can by choice, because they recognize the opportunities ahead. And Bryce, I do think we're going to see Meta roll out robotics infrastructure software. Maybe Google's probably got a whole robotics thing inside of them.
Nvidia's is already, Nvidia's is really.
It feels like our startup industry is behind the 8-ball with the humanoids compared to.
That's good that it feels like that, because that's where we are. That in our Sputnik moment. I mean, it's got to change from here. It's got to get better, and more people have to realize. We've talked, a lot of times, and it's come up like, well, what's the most important thing? Is it the chips? Is it the electricity? Is it the data? This kind of stuff. And I, have argued in favor of the algorithm in a way, which is like, okay, take that stuff as a given that it's going to happen. It's going to keep getting, faster and cheaper, et cetera. It's like, now what's that other piece of it for the process of how this thing gets smart? And what happened in the last couple months? What's the big change? The big change is that it's a new kind of inference. It used to be everything was about, train time. And it was like, what can be done up front? And now once the thing comes out, it's already a year behind in terms of what it knows about, et cetera. And now it's got, what they call test time. And I don't call it test time, but it's run time, and it's like, now we're worried about, we're looking at how much thinking can go on right then when it's asked the question, and how can it get smarter, and how can it remember what it's told there. And Google has, or whoever they are, Alphabet, Google AI.
Just go with Google. We don't.
They have really interesting stuff happening around memory. Around the fact that we talked about how this was going to happen. How this idea of, I only have 32K of context space. They can feed in a chapter or two of a book and have it go figure things out about that. Versus I can feed in an hour-long video, or I can feed in a whole shelf of books and like into the front end, into the here, go think about this side of things. Now that is expanding to almost unlimited, we think, Silliman talks about it, as compared to how it was. And that together with the inference time compute, we're changing. There's more of this going on of how does the thinking take place? Being creative about that. There's so much room for ideas to happen there. I think there's ideas for it with regard to the agent stuff. I'm going to get a super cheap, quick thing that's good at this kind of thinking. And over here, I'm going to get one that has a lot of memory, but at least just knows about this. And it's going to tell when it needs to that. And now your architecture is how those agents talk to each other. It's like what people talk about with great companies. It's like, how does that company work on the inside? That's what it's going to be with how does that agency work?
It's crazy. Bryce, you and I, when we were in New York, we were talking with one of our AI sources about this concept that in some sense, over time, and we're talking decades probably, the stacks of interaction from chips and electrons and chips to operating systems, to applications, to services, and the management that has to happen between different layers. And the technology stack itself for AI is hundreds long, at least dozens of stacks to get to your OpenAI app talking to you. And eventually all that stuff is inefficient and it will just be code talking to electrons, but that's decades away. In the meantime, as John's describing it, like we're going to have an order of magnitude increase in the layers, technology stack layers that communicate with each other and talk to each other. And someone will manage this one and that'll be managed over there and they'll actually work together and you get your ticket.
There'll be a lot of innovation in there, I think, about, finding out what actually works, what gets you ahead, when doing those kinds of things.
Last thoughts, questions, comments.
I wonder about how the different modalities, vision, speech, etc., fit in with this, continually moving ahead on these models. I expect for like Meta to come out with a DeepSeek, of their own within a couple of months, because now that they can see how it's done, and they're the ones with some of the best open source out there, and they keep, working at it and getting a good organization in place, then the idea of, is it China that we're, worried about? I think it's more like, how do we reposition with open source? Because we can make this stuff.
We are.
Yeah.
They are doing it today, right now, because they panicked on Friday. And there were calls being made at, for the head of ML at Meta being like, dude, you better get in the office right now. Your vacation's over. Get your team in here and get working.
Yeah.
$380,000 a year to work 80 hours a week, not 40. Get to work. Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Well, last thoughts.
What do you say, Bryce?
With this last thought, John, when I met you and we were getting to be friends, you were working at a children's clothing catalog retailer.
Yes.
And you managed their network and IT infrastructure.
Yes.
And it was like dial-up AOL. You probably had Sun servers on-prem taking the orders.
We had an AS400 mini computer from IBM that I'm sure the power of it is like in here,
Yeah.
Not
like 10 times, 100 orders of magnitude better power in that thing than
we had
IBM from 1995.
Yeah. The big, it was you'd call it a mini computer, and it was the size of, a couple of refrigerators. And then we had, what did they call them? DS3 circuits that we had, like the connectivity of the phone company, right in our building to handle this call center.
Bryce just learned about T1 the other day, T1 connections from the telecom, before there was DSL and Ethernet interfaces.
Yeah. Yeah.
So John, the reason I phrase that in my last question for you is, can you just talk about, give us a 30-second, how different is what you do now working on AI agents than what you did 30 years ago managing a website?
Well, there's a folk song somebody made once upon a time.
Times they are changing.
That is still true then and now. No, it's called hauling out the data on the Xerox line. And so it was like a blue collar song about, it's code again, something again, give the keyboard a punch, cross correlate and a break for some lunch, correlate, tabulate, process and screen, regress to the mean. So it was like all about just how you're just doing.
So nothing's changed. What you're saying is nothing's changed.
You're just hauling data around. So.
Bryce, last thought, question, comment.
My closing thought is I do think that this is moves overblown. I know that this risk is real. I know it could be substantial, but I do think it's overblown. And I think in 2 years we'll look back and be like, remember when everybody sold their Nvidia because of the DeepSeek? Like, yeah, what was that? And I think that's where we're at. I think.
Bryce, most people
and it could be not 2 years. It could be in 2 weeks.
Yeah, and frankly, if you're right, most people will not remember this in 2 years.
Right.
Nobody's going to remember the August 5th sell-off because the Japanese yen crossed a magic line.
Right.
From one standpoint, but from the other is that's funny. I think that's exactly what Cody said. Zuck called in all hands. So I think is in some areas, maybe in the trading, this is going to be a blip, but in some areas, this could be an important step, and hopefully we don't forget it, and hopefully we use it to.
Sure, I'm talking about in market
talking investors, but yes, I think we all agree that this is, if not a Sputnik moment, some derivative of such a thing. So, yeah. John, last word.
Today's my birthday.
Oh, happy birthday!
Whatever. Thanks, guys. Goodbye. No, I'm just kidding. Of course, happy birthday, my old friend.
Yes.
I love you, man. You've been a long, good friend for many, many years. Peace and love, you guys. I'll talk to you both soon.
All right.
Goodbye.
Catch you later.